Welcome everyone to Epiphan's 2025. I guess I'll call it our spring higher ed symposium because you never know, we're gonna get a fun group like this together again. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm Julian Fernandez with Epiphan. I'll be your host for today, and hopefully you won't have to hear too much from me because we've got a great group of guests here. While my background may look like a lot of fun, Ron and I from our team are really excited to be here in Buffalo, New York, with John and Beth from SUNY University at Buffalo. And then we also have Jeff and Katie joining us from wonderful, I guess you guys are, yeah, is it South Kingston or Kingston, Rhode Island at URI? Fun little area. And then Teddy from University of Pikeville in the mountains of Kentucky. And we're welcoming this really wonderful group here to talk a little bit about the different things we're doing on campus with video and capture. And I think the exciting thing that you're going to hear about from the group today is just how these folks are all able to leverage similar yet different technologies and make them work across a variety of different spaces and different scenarios at I think different size schools and institutions with different focuses. So with that, I think we'll kick off, and I'm going to give this over to Katie and Jeff from URI to talk a little bit about what they're doing with some really fun room standardization, different integrations, and how they support both events and classroom capture and pretty much all AV on campus.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. Yeah, so Jeff and I are from the University of Rhode Island. And again, I always say my president will be really mad if I don't highlight that we're New England's #1 public institution. He's been on the kick for it, and it is a really great thing to be a part of. So we are a full service unit at the University of Rhode Island. So this means in addition to maintaining and being the first call for classrooms when people have issues, we also do full maintenance. So Jeff is our end route in terms of AV support on campus. We also have another technician that helps us with audio visual. So we will do the design, the installation, the planning, et cetera, for the majority of classrooms on campus, and we're starting to actually go into capital projects as well. And then we also do what Julian mentioned, the other side of the house, which is live event. So we do live events. So we produce all of our president's State of the University addresses, big addresses, annual lecture series, student award shows, consumer outreach or community outreach and things like that. And so we have our hands in every AV pot and we have a ton of fun with it, don't we, Jeff?
Oh, yes. It's so much fun. Yeah, we really do everything in-house at this point, too. I don't think I've had anything really go out to an integrator in a while. That means we're designing, we're installing, we're programming. We've actually moved to full AV over IP on campus. So that means we're now dealing with multicast networking on campus. So yeah, we've gone full bore, and we do everything. In addition to that, we've also moved to a full new control platform on campus. We were another manufacturer's house for a long time. We've now moved to a full QSys campus, so we're doing QSys for everything.
Yeah, and kind of with that, and kind of as Julian mentioned, we've been really focusing over the past 10 years predominantly to standardize everything, right? So starting first step of making sure all of our touch panels where we could start looking similar for faculty. And now we're really trying to hammer out the haves and have-nots in terms of classroom offerings. So we don't want faculty only being able to teach in one room and space to do their course content. We like them to be able to have the flexibility that as long as their class fits in the room, they know they have all the resources to teach as they need and want to teach in the space.
Yeah, I like to say we'll move towards a singularity on campus where it is one touch panel across all campus. It doesn't matter if you're in the smallest classroom or our largest auditorium. You walk in, it's going to look exactly the same. You have the same, I like the word we use, entitlements. And when you walk into that classroom, you know exactly what's in there, regardless of where you are.
Yeah. And in efforts of that also to balance full standardization, and some of the photos that were going past, I'm sure people saw, were of open wires and running things. We have a really strong belief structure of you design for 90% of your use cases and know how to augment for that 10% to really make your events pop. When we do a lot of high quality production events, we want to make sure we're not overhauling and disrupting a classroom immensely to make these events happen. And so we try to make sure within our design, we as a professional team of 5 know what needs to be done quickly and efficiently to flip a space to accommodate those event needs and not make Jeff pull his hair out at us for undoing his systems.
So I think, Katie, we have an interesting question on that. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's a big statement for a lot of folks of, hey, we have these rooms set up for dual use. So, Jeff's not going crazy redesigning something at, 11 p.m. because classes start at 9 a.m. next morning.
Mm-hmm.
How do you plan for that and truly integrate that into your designs?
Yeah, so a lot of it started really coming out for during COVID when hybrid started becoming a lot more popular for events, right? Prior to that, if someone was live streaming, you had usually months or weeks where you knew that was going to happen. But COVID flipped it where everyone got comfortable with hybrid events. They got comfortable with our video platforms. And when that happened, they were like, well, can't we just throw a web call on for this and bring this person in here? And so we had to start thinking, how do we do this quickly and efficiently? And one of the photo reel sets you saw was actually before and after. It was us workshopping, okay, we have the Pearl here to do our class capture, but there's a local HDMI out. What do we have on that HDMI out? So we took the local loop out and we just re-ingested it back into a computer that was running a Zoom because that was actually being connected to Indonesia. And it was a celebration because we have a great partnership with Indonesia for research and student and scholarship. And so it was to connect Kingston, Rhode Island, on the East Coast of the United States out to Indonesia. So that way these students that were graduating and being celebrated as part of this program could be viewed by their family back home. And it made it super easy for us. And it's actually so easy that now we have the necessary devices in our office and our students know what to do. They grab the adapter, they grab the cable, the room has a Pearl, they connect the cables in, and they're turning any room that may not have had by default, since we are in phases, to easily do hybrid out of box. It's how we're bridging these older rooms that are in good shape that we added a Pearl to get recording in. And now we're making them able to flip into also doing hybrid where they weren't originally designed for hybrid in terms of two-way communication hybrid.
That's awesome. We love to hear about that flexibility. And I promise for the audience, we didn't plant that question to get Katie to talk about the Pearl. It's just fun to hear about, how her and Jeff were able to integrate it and get that great flexibility out of it. And I think that's, I think we're going to hand it over to Teddy in a moment to talk a little bit about what he's doing at Pikeville. And again, the fun thing there is he has very different spaces because there's a larger kind of graduate component and medical school simulation labs that he's responsible for, and he's again able to leverage the technology in some really fun ways. But I would be remiss to add, I think I was very excited to get to our panel discussion and Q&A and everybody's presentations because we've all been on this call, mic check and everything, hanging out for a few minutes, and it's been phenomenal. But we want everybody in the audience to participate as well. So I've been monitoring the chat. We have a few other Epiphan folks in there. So please, ask away and we'll have that Q&A session pretty soon at the end where we want everybody that's here involved, not just those of us who are hanging out in video. We also do have a few poll questions so you can understand kind of the makeup of the group here, what you guys are responsible for at your universities, and make sure we're talking about the right topics for everyone. So with that, I will give it over to Teddy to talk about all the great things he's doing at Pikeville.
All right. Well, I'm Teddy Murphy, academic technology and AV specialist over here in sunny Pikeville, Kentucky. We are a very interesting school. We have, our undergrad component, which is a fairly small component. We also have a medical school and a nursing school and a optometry school here on our campus. So we work, our team supports that as well as we support all of our events on campus. I think last year we supported 540 events on campus with a team of 3 full-time employees, plus our student workers. So, that's what we do. You were talking about the differences between our undergrad and our graduate programs. Our undergrad is pretty standardized. Every room has the same UCI, the same workflow. They are all, about 80% equipped with lecture capture hardware. Any undergrad faculty can go into any room and be able to utilize it. We tried to keep a similar approach, utilizing the same type of equipment, but the rooms are just a little bit different flavor in our professional schools. A lot of lab spaces, a lot of simulation spaces, We'll talk about our medical school. Like one of the shots that was just going through is our osteopathic manipulative medicine lab. That works like a full service production studio. We have a lot of all PTZ cameras, switching. We're live streaming as well as doing overflow video around the room for all the students at all the tables. Um, all that gets captured. Of course, we're utilizing Panopto for lecture capture. So, like I said, they run that as a production studio, record everything, and then the lectures are there. We have gross anatomy labs. We have video in gross anatomy, traditional lecture halls, some research areas that have a lot of video stuff. Then we have our simulation areas for what we call OSCEs. Down there, it's 12 laid out, just look just like your typical doctor's office when you're going for a doctor's visit. Multiple cameras in those rooms. In the rooms, we are using a cloud-based system that is something they pay a subscription fee to, but we ran into some issues with academic dishonesty. So because their hallway cameras were not being captured in that system. So what we it was actually Julian's idea here. Uh, we're going with Pearl 2s, a couple of those, and we're just going to pick up the NDI streams for those hallway cameras and capture those. We are standardized across campus with QSIS, so we use the plugins to control, give them a touch panel in their control hot in the control room, and as soon as the students start to exit from the OSCE room out into the hallway, we can start the recording for the hallway and be able to help with academic dishonesty there. We're working over in our optometry school. Their classrooms all have lecture capture. Their lab spaces are going to be getting equipped with it starting this summer. Even then, like we just saw our methods labs went by. That's the ones that look like your standard optometry office. Each one of those is 17 lanes, that's 17 different chairs, so that's 17 AV systems. Each of them have, a camera, a display, an in-room PC for their slit lamp, and they also need to view what's happening out in the main area. So again, like Jeff, we standardize with AV over IP here, QSIS platform. And we're putting a couple pearls in there for students to utilize that for their board preps. They can utilize those spaces to record themselves so that they can see what's going to be happening. We even have one of those rooms is our surgical suite. I don't know how other states are. I know in Kentucky in particular, optometrists are allowed to perform eye surgery. And we have a surgical suite on campus to do that. And starting now, we will be recording these surgeries. We have the patients are going to be signing permission for us to do this. So in those spaces, there will be cameras. We're going to be using pearls. And while this is also happening, we'll also be streaming these surgeries into those methods lanes for the students that are there and want to watch it kind of in person, but not actually in the surgical suite. So there's a lot, like he said, we don't have a standard, but we have a standard.
I think it's amazing to hear all these different spaces. Like I said, you use that kind of core platform standard and flexibly apply it where needed. And I know, you're claiming to thank me for the idea of the Pearl 2, but the fun thing of everybody being here is Roundabout. That kind of came from some of the stuff that Katie and Jeff are doing at URI, where they put Pearl 2s in some of their bigger spaces, and that opened some eyes for us. So we're going to share it with everybody, and it's always fun to see. But I think one question, as everybody's trying to digest all these great things you're doing, Teddy, is Tom's asking in the chat, how many student workers do you have on your team of 3 to keep all this stuff running?
We have 5.
Wow. So you've got some pretty talented students then working with you too. That's great.
We so we have built a report with our IT program here, and all of their students are required to do internships starting their freshman year. And some of them choose, since we are in the IT department, they choose to come under AV, so we get them when they're freshmen, and we can keep them for 4 years. And every year, some of them move on to because they want to learn networking or other things, so they move around. But we have a couple really good ones who have been with us now for 3 of what'll be their 4 years.
That's great to hear, and I'm sure they're probably very excited about AV and all the fun stuff they're doing. So set them up for a nice career
Coup-
path, which I know was a
yeah, a couple of them have picked up some internships with some major installers this summer back
oh,
home.
that's great to
So
hear. I know everybody. I know it's always a big topic in our industry is that talent pipeline. So it's great to hear. You know, in addition to the kind of graduate professional schools, you've got a really nice undergrad program there in Pikeville. And you know, with that, I want to hand this over to John and Beth, who we're all sitting in the room together, and I see John smiling and Beth smiling, and excited for them to talk about kind of their journey with AV technology at University at Buffalo. And I know they've been pushing boundaries here for a long time, doing some great things and always looking to keep on the cutting edge, just like most of us here. So I'm going to hand it over to them to talk about their journey with capture and AV across campus.
Thanks, Julian. So yeah, here at the University at Buffalo, we are the flagship university of the State University of New York. We've got about 30,000 students. I think that's combined undergrad and grad. We've got about 9 professional schools, medical, dental, nursing, law, you name it. You can learn it here. And I'm going to take you way back. I started with lecture capture in purpose-built studio classrooms back in 1999. And at that time, we were recording VHS tapes for the School of Engineering's EngNet program, and they were mailing them out to master's students who were, getting their class credits that way. So we had some nicely tricked out rooms. We could also do ISDN video conferencing in those spaces. And we partnered with BOCES programs around the state, or at least the western part of the state, to provide classes from the Graduate School of Education. So we did evolve from the VHS tapes, as you can see on that cart there, to recording in Windows Media. But of course, the look of that 340 by 280 Windows Media Stream, you couldn't read a slide on that. So we pushed to get Accordant so that we had a rich media capture. And we started with Accordant in 2004. And also, I will say that we had these purpose-built studios, but we didn't have enough capacity. So that's why we built the carts that we did and rolled those into the classroom in the 10-minute window between classes and plugged into the classroom spaces. Everybody had a key so they could get into the back of the teaching station or the slide carousel cabinet at the back of the room. We've come a long way from there. And John can talk about the other avenue.
So while Beth was doing all of that work, we were looking to do automated audio recordings, get rid of our language tape lab, get rid of reel-to-reel recording in the medical school where we were recording audio. So we decided we were going to bring some used computers and real audio producer to the table, and grabbed a bunch of students that could program. They wrote some scheduling scripts for us, and we had automated audio capture in the classroom on a budget. And it grew. Before we knew it, we were doing it for more than just the medical school, more than just language tapes, and departments wanted this. So I was always scrambling to figure out how to capture content besides capturing a screen. And then Beth's group and my group got together, and before you knew it, we were capturing content. And now we're looking at what does the next thing look like. And that's why we're sitting in the room with Epiphan.
And we're always excited to hear that and kind of see the evolution. And I see, I'll give Elaine from MIT a shout out in the chat, because we were talking about how she did a lot of the similar things you're talking about doing, Beth, back in the day, and how that evolution has happened. And it's fun to see how so many of you have grown and understand that background and kind of are constantly working to deliver that better experience. And that's why we're excited to be here and work with John, you, and Beth to keep improving that system as we go. And one of the things I'm going to push the audience again, guys. We're here for you. We're going to open up the floor for everyone to answer your questions and hear about kind of where things are going across the board. I will say, I think everybody here kind of touched on a bit in automated lecture capture, and may have mentioned that P word, which is Panopto, that we know a lot of you folks are using. So we just want to also give a shout. We've got Michael and Lucian from the Panopto team who are also in the chat, happy to answer questions on Panopto or, make intros afterwards. You can reach out to any of the Epiphan folks, or I'm sure, also if you want to talk to any of the panelists afterwards about what they're doing. I know everybody's always excited to share what they're doing. So with that, I think let's kind of kick off the Q&A side of things and open this up to the panel. I think, one of the fun things to ask all of you, John mentioned it. We're in the room with you guys. How did you kind of find Epiphan and decide that the Pearl was the right appliance to integrate with your kit, and just throw that out there, and whoever wants to dive in can take it.
So I can start. So when we were using Accordant, that was on a PC. And then we moved to Echo, which was an appliance. And then when we moved to Panopto, we went back to, and this is what we have mostly on campus now, is we built a shelf in the rack. And it's a micro Dell and a couple of Inigene capture cards and a Focusrite to capture audio. And so now we're kind of looking to go back to the ease of use of having an appliance.
On the recording side, we've also had a couple Pearl Minis that we've used in our high-end council room for the university council meetings, and pretty pleased with how that operates for that space.
Indeed.
Jeff and I got dragged kicking and screaming into recording content and doing it in 2020. We were very much staying away from it at first. And then when lockdown happened, we knew we were going to have to change our tune. That something that we were like, we don't have the bandwidth or the staff for this yet, we felt. And so Jeff took advantage of that time. I'll let Jeff talk a little bit more about how we ended up with Epiphan in our lives.
Yeah, because I actually had found Epiphan when I was at Masters back in 2019. There was a booth set up there for lecture capture. I went and got to hands-on with the Pearl Mini at that time. And when it came time for, okay, COVID happened, we need to actually introduce lecture capture back into our classrooms. It kind of was a no-brainer because I already knew the back-end features, and it was going to be easier for me to integrate into our classrooms. So, yeah, it's been a while.
So when I started here at the University of Pikeville, we had another manufacturer's appliances in some of our lecture halls, and they were a Windows-based box that was having a lot of issues. So I found Epiphan through HETMA, the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. They went through the approved program, and a lot of the guys were talking about these appliances. So I ordered one for myself because I didn't get to participate in the demo. It's still sitting here on my desk. I like the workflow, like the back end flow. And I was like, all right, so we need to start replacing these appliances. And that's how we chose to go with this, because a lot of good word of mouth from people that I trusted in the industry, and then just liking basically really enjoying how it worked.
It's always great to hear from y'all. How you just kind of you find the technology that works for you. And we're always, Ron, myself, and the whole team here at Epiphan are always so excited to hear that. And it seems like for in a lot of cases that story seems to play out where, hey, we tried it for this one use case, and like Jeff said, hey, you get to know the back end and this is capable, and then the fun of integration starts. And I think that leads to something that we were all kind of joking around and chatting about before, that Mary's asking the chat is, how do you monitor and manage these systems with smaller staffs, and kind of, I think Katie made a great point before the call, advocating about how do we get more resources. And I know that's probably the follow-up part of that everybody's asking, like, how do you make sure if it needs more resources, how do we get them to make sure the system works?
Yeah, so a lot of it for us, thankfully, it's great. And our videographer lives and dies by it. Epiphan does have a great Epiphan cloud. I'm sure everyone's heard about it if you're on this call. But cloud-based for any of your AV systems, anything you have that gives you that look-in or that remote access, it maximizes your time and your day, right? So when there's fewer of you and you're physically on campus and something's wrong, the time it takes you to get across campus, you're losing staff time, you're losing class time, you're losing your own workday time, and it's all to get out there and to evaluate, even do the bare bones sometimes, because as we all know, instructors will call and they're very good at saying it's broken and they don't tell you how it's broken. So we know that. And so when you have these tools that let you peek in to immediately touch and get to your devices and say, okay, what are you actually doing? And for us, we found a lot of times with the alert systems in various platforms, we know before faculty do that there's an issue. And so we'll be standing there in between classes or as their class is starting going, we have to fix something right now. Can you give us like 2 minutes? And they're like, I'm impressed that you know this is a problem. And I'm like, well, hopefully it's solved quick. But all of that access is really how you leverage a small team to have a large, quick impact. It can do double-edged sword. I know Tanya were talking about it, but when you do everything well on your own, it's sometimes hard to get that justification for why you need other people, because you can become a little too invisible. But it is also a great way to relieve pressure on your team and relieve pressure on your time in your day.
I think that's a great point, Katie. I think I'm excited to see what we can use our students to do besides just sitting and monitoring recordings all day long. Maybe they can learn some programming and learn some better how to install things, for instance. That's really exciting to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my kids replace projectors. They do lamps and filter. When we saw with a handful of lamps, that they clean filters and lasers. That's been a tenet of our unit since I inherited it from the previous supervisor for the unit, is to really train up your students. Right? They are there for it. They are usually really interested in it, but the catch is always an acceptance. You have to accept as a student supervisor to have good, strong student employees. It will take your time. So it will take your time to dedicate and your consistency to get their training going, but it will pay you back in dividends. And also it feeds the industry. We had a run there for a few years. I'm looking at Jeff, trying to remember about how many, where every year we were graduating a student who, I call it the commencement crisis, where they suddenly sit in my office and they go, you do this for a job. And I'm like, yes. Like, could I do this for a job? And I'm like, also, yes. And so we set them up with industry training, which if none of you have gone to your manufacturers or talked to them, almost everybody has for higher education in some capacity free training. And we set students up who are going on that path, right? They're going to become professionals, our peers. We want to make sure that they're getting trained and that they're also taking our name forward, that University of Rhode Island makes good student workers. That's what we kind of want to be known for as we send them out the door from us. And so we had a good run there. Like every year I had one student graduating, getting hired within 3 to 4 months and working in AV. And that was kind of awesome to see happen.
We had a success story, I guess you could say. One of my student workers graduated, and now she is one of my full-time employees. So we were ecstatic that happened. And talk about other work that student workers do. Back in January, we just had a small classroom that kind of got chucked on our plate. So I let the student workers lead that project, the installation. I did the design because it's just the same design that we already do standard undergrad. And I let them take lead on the whole project and just kind of oversaw it. So it turned out well. I was very pleased with that. And as for support, like you said, Epiphan Cloud and using QSys, I have a lot of emailers built into my designs. So I get a lot of emails to know when things are not working. And like same thing, like I'll be on vacation and get the notifications and be telling my team on site, hey, this is down in that room. Like, well, we haven't got a ticket for it yet. I was like, I got an email. Go check help desk. I promise you it's there.
I like hearing that, Teddy, because that feels like when I'm on vacation too. I get all the emails. I'm like, oh, this is broken. Somebody needs to go fix this. Yeah,
Yep.
I don't get the emailers, but we'd set up a really good UCI tech page panel for our rooms, so our students can full screen. It's a complete like read out everything in the room. Like, is something connected to the HDMI? We'll get instructors calling, oh, the laptop's not projecting. Our students can pull up the tech page. Well, we actually don't see your HDMI connected. Can you can you tell me you plugged into that or not? So everything. Our ceiling mics are reporting in there, all our microphones. Actually, even the Pearl reports into the tech page for our students so they can at a glance, oh, look, we got the video coming in, we got the camera feed coming in, so they can easily, we can fix most things without ever going to the room now.
I love hearing that as an AV guy as well, because talking about small staffs and supporting these spaces, the more you know, the faster you know it, the better things work. And I think that's we're touching on it already, but we've got a really fun question for Matthew. Like, what Jeff mentioned some of yours, Teddy, you've got your email alerts, and everybody on the call has an Epiphan cloud account. But what management tools are you using to make that workflow function that way? And it sounds like, Teddy, you've got the emails, but then there's that other step of how do we get it to the team?
Yeah, the emailers email me and our help desk. As for monitoring, we use QSys Reflect, but I feel like Reflect has a little bit of a lag behind it. So we have stood up a virtual machine, and we are running multiple designer instances for most of our cores at all times in that. And I get into that to monitor designer throughout the day when I'm here. So that's part of how I'm handling knowing things are happening when I'm on-prem. And like I said, if I'm off, help desk alerts, uh, that's really the biggest thing. We don't have like a centralized management platform like a lot of people are looking for. Single pane of glass for everything showing up. Haven't found anything that has excited me yet that I like. There's a few new ones that I haven't tried, and I'm hoping one of them finally checks some boxes. But that's why I use the homebrewed solution of opening a whole bunch of designer instances in a virtual machine that has access to all my VLANs, and it's working okay for me.
Yeah, we have Reflect spun up. We're using Epiphan Cloud. Trying to think of all the other ones. Like we use ClickShares on campus, so we have XMS spun up also, which kind of helps. But yeah, we really don't have. I think the most instant one I tend to use a lot actually is Panopto. Will tell me when a remote recorder is down and give me a warning before a recording scheduled to go live. That's usually when I am sending a panic Discord message to the students. This recorder's offline. You need to go turn it back on. Go see what's up.
Yeah, and that's a good point also, like when it comes to trying to do timely, quick, and also response to issues, it's great to have your reporting things, but you also have to make sure the reports are going in and that someone is either looking at them or you're rolling them down through and you have a structure to get support now out, right? And so and it's going to be different per team. Like my team lives and dies by our calendar. The calendar tells them what to do, when to go. We throw things on the calendar, and it ends up going through a nice run through. So we have a generic student account that students keep an eye on. So things hit there. Staff, students, we all put things on the calendar, and that's for record keeping, right? So our emails are our record keeping communication pathways. Instant communication, going back and forth on things within the team. Years ago, when we used to use instant messenger across our multiple locations, AIM instant messenger, when that died, I looked at my students and I go, I don't care what you pick. But find me something that can do my A, B, C, and D things, and we'll do it. And they came to me going, we're going to use Discord. I'm like, that's fine. I don't care. Whatever you will use and open in the office and respond to. So our whole unit's on Discord. So is our IT team. We have it separated by type of problem, and we can ping each other and things like that. And so it really helps us deploy and stay connected fast. Also, the magic of a student sending you a photo when they're like, I don't know what's wrong with this system. And we can look at it and go, well, I do, because I know what light should be on that I'm not seeing right now. And it's a great maximization of a tool that is ubiquitous and students already know how to use, which was the other great side of it.
We just turned on the old-fashioned Motorola radios with 3 campuses separated by 20 miles, and they work great, and we're able to hear everybody. So sometimes we're not all on Teams or Jabber or whatever we're using this week. So the radios are a great way to keep in touch. But from the cloud perspective, we're looking at XIO still, some Fusion for X panel control, and then Panopto's remote recorders.
So I think the next kind of fun question, I think, Katie touched on it and Jeff with the, hey, using that Panopto kind of tool to monitor, hey, recorder's down, we got to go capture this class. But, Aaron has an interesting question, kind of taking a step back. I know we're all AV pros. We love, what's going on in the room. How do we make that magic happen there? But, we've also talked about students a lot, but what about those faculty members? How do you get the buy-in from the faculty for recording and to really leverage this technology?
So one of the areas where recording is growing for us, which is helping us push recording into smaller and smaller classrooms on campus, is the need for accommodations for accessibility, for medical leaves. So that's a thing that we've gotten caption requests over the years from our accessibility resources folks, but since COVID, the students really, they're just wanting recording so they can rewatch that and watch it at a slower speed. It's really, that's where we're seeing a lot of growth.
Accommodations and mandates. It's actually in, like for our osteopathic medical school, it is actually in their requirements for accreditation that all of their content has to be available online and in person. So it wasn't, the faculty were forced to have to get behind it there. And then since the medical school was doing it, it trickled around to the other schools to where not every school requires it, but most of the faculty are already doing it, so it just kind of caught on.
So our faculty were very low on in-class recording beforehand. Like we said, Jeff and I got dragged kicking and screaming into this in 2020. We did have one college that was already fully recording all their lectures. And so when we knew we had to spin this up, I went and I talked to their technician. I go, what's the biggest takeaway? And he said, schedule it. He goes, faculty are way more willing to use it and have it and are okay with it if they can schedule it. And so that's how we really push our use of our recording in our classrooms. And what we actually also now do, I have the ability from my registrar's office, I can do a report and I can get every instructor, every room they're teaching for the semester. So I know who's where, who's in what style of room, et cetera. And we send them, we try not to over email our instructors. We try to make it really targeted. It's like a marketing plan, basically, of when we contact them, why we're contacting them. But we send them a targeted one about if our numbers are looking low for scheduled recordings in Panopto. I send an email out and I go, hey, we go, in case you didn't realize, you're scheduled in a classroom that has the ability to, do automated lecture capture. If you're interested in this, please reach out, please open a ticket with us and we will get you your access and get you training documents. And my grad assistant hated me when I had her send this out because she was like, we're going to get so many emails and tickets. I'm like, yes, but I want them to use the tools and they deserve to know they can use them. And so proactive communication. And because we have an established rapport with our faculty where they know we are not going to overwhelm them with what they can view as unnecessary communications because we're very targeted and limited in when we email them, we get really good response. I got like 40% response rate from a faculty survey a month or so ago because they understand if I'm emailing them, there's probably a reason and they thankfully respect and like us enough to fill out my quick survey for me. So we have a really good connection in that regard into interactivity from our faculty.
I'd love to hear that, and how we build usage of all this great technology that we've put in. We talked about, hey, how do we get the faculty to access it? But I think really, interesting question in the chat around, you mentioned Panopto as kind of that VCMS where the content's going, but how do you at your universities then share that content out to the students for them to leverage it and kind of how do you encourage that beyond those kind of, accessibility or, more broad cases?
Yeah, I know for us, ours is all within the back of our LMS. So because when you have with our LMS platform and Panopto and the Pearl, the three kind of all in tandem, when an instructor publishes their course, they automatically in Panopto get a corresponding folder as their courses change. So as they get new students added, dropped, etc., the folder always stays accurate for who should have access to that video. And then because they have that corresponding folder in Panopto, when they schedule their recording on the Panopto side, everything dumps into that folder if they've selected it. There is that level of human error that can occur, but as long as their videos are going into the home where the students are supposed to have access and the LMS connection manages that access, that's where students can have them. A lot of them in their LMS course during COVID had a little link that just said live class here, because you can also live stream with it and things like that. And so they would just have live class here and the students would click it and the live class for the week would appear for them, and it's a one button press, get into your video. You can also put any stored content same way. Panopto has a lot of great integrations with multiple LMS platforms to make it kind of a one use in the LMS tool use also a lot of times.
Katie, I have a follow-up question. Do you have faculty, do they schedule their own?
Yes, absolutely. I will not do it for them. I train them, I walk them through it, we'll fix it for them. But we also restrict their access to the recorder, right? So they don't get the recorder access automatically. So they email us saying, hey, I'm teaching in this classroom. May I have recorder access? And we go, of course you may. Here's your training guide on how to do it. And then sometimes if we can, what we also try to do is in that week or so before classes, when their contracts start, I try to like in the evenings, I have students that sit in a Zoom room that are just drop in and they know how to use Panopto, know how to get to their admins on the back end, and they sit there. And that way, if instructors have issues, they can go into their account and go, okay, let me see where you're having issues. And we try to really make sure we're always training at any reported issue instance, because the ultimate goal with a small team is I want my faculty to be empowered and know what they're doing, because I would love to see them less. They're all great and wonderful, but usually if they're seeing me, there's a problem. So I would like to see them less, and I'd like them to be confident in using all their tools.
Apparently we are way too helpful here because we schedule all of our classroom recordings for the faculty.
Yeah,
We are mixed.
Mhm.
I was just gonna say, our medical school has a centralized person who does all of their Panopto scheduling. But our undergrad and our optometry school, they have to schedule all their own recordings.
You know, we get, because you can repeat it out in Panopto, right? So they can do the whole semester. I'd have to go back and see the report out for this one, but we usually get on average a couple hundred of self-scheduled recordings in Panopto. That instructor set up, they do. Of course, they call us and they go, what do I do? I set it for the wrong time, sort of thing. But they're really good. They're really good at not overlapping with each other, because that can interrupt like sometimes if you try to buffer yourself and be like, I want a O space, so you can't invade another instructor's time slot. But upfront communication, we found like one-page PDF guides that we attach to the emails and we send out in advance, like, here's your training of how you're going to do this thing. Call us if you have trouble. We will help you when you have trouble. And giving them that kind of reinforcement guide, they can try it themselves first. They tend to really like. And or at the very least, right now it's working for us. We're trying to keep going and seeing if there's ways to enhance it. But that's been working successfully from what we're aware of thus far.
Do any of us give the professors like ad hoc access to where they could just start and stop the recordings themselves in the room and then take care of it later, or we're going to apply the folders on the UCI in the rooms?
Yeah, we don't have ours turned on, I know.
Yeah.
We are going to sort of pilot that in the fall. This summer, we're going to put about 10 Epiphans out there, and we're updating the touch panel in those rooms. For one thing, so it notifies them when there's no audio, because that's one of the biggest problems is they didn't put the mic on, they didn't unmute it. You know, I'm sure all of you have had that same problem. But this is exciting. They'll be able to, pause a recording that's been scheduled. They'll be able to extend it maybe 5 minutes. And also they'll be able to hopefully record ad hoc. We have to kind of figure that out yet, that whole process and how we know when an ad hoc recording has been made that we need to move.
Mm-hmm.
So we also had to do recently with our optometry school install busy lights on the outside of our closet because faculty would schedule the recordings. It would start and mics would unmute because we have ceiling mics in there, and students wouldn't know they were being recorded, and there were some conversations getting picked up that shouldn't be taking place in a public setting. So I went through and had to install a busy light on the outside of the closets so that the students could see the red light and know, oh crap, we're being recorded. We shouldn't talk about that Morgan Wallen concert.
Oh, like any AV event, we're having some tech difficulties here with cameras and connectors. So hopefully we'll have John back in a moment as he's
You still have me on audio.
well, he's still on audio, which
Oh.
is the good thing, but the camera is being entertaining. So we're doing some AV troubleshooting live, which is we're all experts at that. But somehow when you combine everybody thinking about it together, it seems to just not cooperate, no matter what we
You
know.
know,
So
It's actually an escape room, Julian. That's what's happening right now.
it might be. I see Ron in the window waving at us, so that might be it. He locked us and pulled some network connection. But we're always exciting. I think there's one really interesting question that popped up in the chat, and I think we're talking a lot about recording and capture and that accessibility and using the recordings afterwards. But I know some folks live stream the classes, and Maximilian brought up like, hey, we have challenges with students not attending class, and I know we've talked about this with some other schools. Like, how does that work out on campus for everyone here? Do faculty see students not attending? Do they encourage the recordings? What does that look like?
I would say that's the biggest hindrance to getting faculty to agree to have classes recorded. And that's been the case for, 20 years. And yet faculty, I think now they manage to do things in class to draw people in. They'll do more audience response things where you have to be in the room. So they've just, over the years, they have developed some techniques to try and draw students in. And then there are some faculty who really don't care. They're like, I'm going to record it and you're going to get that content one way or another. And, it works.
we still have attendance policies for most of our schools here, and most of our rooms also have badge scanners to make sure that the students are badging in when they come to class. I mean, that doesn't always work. You could send your badge with your friend, but the other thing is some people have went to QR codes at the beginning of their sessions, and they scheduled their live streams to start 5 minutes after the class would actually start. So the first slide they put up when they come in has the QR code. The students scan it. They're tracked being in, and then it goes to the next slide. And by that point, the live stream starts, and hopefully the students are checked in.
Yeah, our faculty doesn't seem to be the biggest fear for them. I'm not sure if that's just a really great messaging from our faculty development office of trying to kind of innovate and engage, or if it's just the nature of the type of students and courses. But it's not usually their biggest concern. When it comes to when we do encounter their instructors, we do try to remind them that all of their tools, they get to control how much access students have, right? It takes a little bit of like work and stuff on the back end, but they could choose that their folder is recording their first quarter is for the first exam, and students can't view back those courses until after the first exam because their purpose is to help them review ahead of the final, let's say, or they can delay access to the recordings or only make the recordings available for the same day as the course and things like that. So you have faculty have control options. It is a lot to put on faculty. We have to recognize, especially for us, we are an extremely heavy teaching institution. Most of our instructors have very heavy teaching loads. And so a lot of them do fall to that capacity. If I want my students to leave and learn and know what they're know what they need to know when they leave us and move on. So we don't see them get super afraid of that side of live streaming. Some of them will just record for insurance. So they record all their lectures. They don't tell the students that they have them, but if requested, they'll provide them to students with reasonable accommodations, excuses, needs, etc. So, or again, some may just open them up end of semester in terms of review for final and things like that.
A lot of our faculty have done that for like CYA purposes. Like if you're going into licensure, if you're teaching in a subject field that leads to licensure, they will capture their lectures and not always publish them, but they're there so that if the student fails their license, they're like, well, I wasn't taught this, and tries to sue the college, which happens more than people realize, especially in professional schools. How many students will fail their licensure for a medical school and then try to sue the school? So luckily we always have, we have to maintain these lecture recordings for a reasonable time after they graduate until they achieve licensure or they give up and figure out they're never going to make it. That's a mean thing to say, but some students just, yeah. I have a running list of students that I will never let be my doctor if I see their name on something.
I mean, that's, I guess, the fun side of seeing some of the recordings and requests too. You learn a bit and you adjust, and yeah, sometimes it's not sort of the faculty side. And I think, I loved Katie's point, and I see Sean and Elaine kind of commenting the same things at their institutions around kind of giving that faculty control there too over when they share those recordings, and maybe who they share them with, because maybe, yeah, just like Teddy, they see those students of, hey, this kid's been skipping class, we need a different discussion, not here's the recording. I think there's an interesting question from Dale up in Sask Poly, who I know we've talked about, and they're, like a lot of folks on their survey, they're kind of working out how do we roll out our capture across campus. But a lot of I think everybody here has deployed mostly hardware in a lot of spaces on campus. But how do we determine in your institution which spaces get a hardware capture solution versus just asking faculty to use software on a PC?
Say for us, since we've been in slow rollout, it's size of space, right? And what necessitates and needs that hardware solution. So when we first started putting Epiphans out, our only requirement for what rooms got Epiphan Pearl devices were, okay, they have multiple displays and they have microphones and voice lift in the room. Those were our two kind of considerations, because there was no easy way to navigate that from a computer-based solution. And because there was no easy way to do that, we needed a hardware solution to make it equally easy. And in that regard, what we found is that faculty vastly prefer the hardware solution. They request it in spaces that don't have it because they like the ease of scheduling, and they like the ease of, I don't have to touch it. I walk into class, it turns on, my lecture's recorded, I'm done. But some of them, as we went forward, we found there was that increased need for either, maybe not the Panopto background that we have. A lot of them like to do Zoom classes. They wanted a higher level of either hybrid and interactivity. And so with that, we've started developing and looking at the capacity of, okay, we do seat counts, right? So in terms of math, you're right, math. When you have a course credit, you look at how many times a week that course meets in the room, how many students, how many butts are in the chair by their registrar list, and you do the math out for each room, and it gives you what we refer to as a student kind of impact hour for a classroom. So how many hours of education are being delivered in that particular classroom? And that drives a lot of our prioritization in spaces of, okay, the highest used rooms are going to get stuff first because we know we're going to impact the most students by hitting these rooms. By nature, yes, your auditoriums will be there first, but you will have some of your smaller, for us, it's 46 seat classrooms that have also really high student hours and are booked from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
For us, it was, like I said, a lot of what leads to licensure. Those classrooms, but at first, like our School of Business because of accounting, our School of Education, their classrooms were in the initial rollout for undergrad. Medical school and optometry were before undergrad. And then after most of those programs, we went back and pulled numbers from the registrar to look at the most utilized spaces. And we found that we had one building in particular that was running 98% utilization. So we ended up outfitting that entire building, and that's the order of our rollout for hardware.
Yeah, I would say similar to URI, we started with larger classrooms that actually had microphones in them. And of course, our larger lecture halls first got the hardware. In high COVID times, we rolled out microphones and cameras to pretty much every room, even if it was just a camera that was on a planar monitor at the teaching station, so that folks could use that software. But yeah, faculty do not like to have to start Panopto in the room. But in doing that, we were enabling them to use Zoom. So we made everything, where we were putting any camera and a microphone, you can do Zoom or you can do Panopto. And, hopefully in the next year or so, we'll have hardware options for Panopto in all the classrooms, all the central classrooms.
So I think there's kind of stepping back a second, as I've seen, we're talking about how we're getting the video, how it's getting into Panopto. We did touch on accessibility for a bit and making these courses available, but I have two questions for both Ed and Matthew on kind of closed captioning from the accessibility side. How do you make this available? I know there are a lot of different ways and some different schools do it, in the room versus on the cloud, but how's everybody on the call addressing that need?
So we don't do, you can do live captioning with Zoom, but Panopto doesn't do live captioning. So our accessibility office does provide students who need like a hearing assist. We certainly have that in most of our classrooms these days.
We have a mixed deployment. So obviously you can do post-editing caption after for, watch back in Panopto. When it comes to real time, Zoom's one option. The other option, which is getting a lot of popularity in our campus, is actually Microsoft's built-in AI captioning and PowerPoint. That's getting a lot of traction for us. It's getting really popular. There is some hurdles with it. So we have classroom computers deployed in our spaces. And because of the account license they're on, they're not allowed. They don't have the clearance to use the captioning, which was a very fun thing to find right before an event. And I thought I could use it and I couldn't, but that was fine. So there is that limitation side of it from there, but that's kind of how we're approaching it in that capacity, is finding what's available in our current tools and how they make sense. But right now, nothing's super perfect. Nothing is consistent across. Nothing's independent of a computer itself currently. And so I would say that's kind of the growing concern on our campus. We all have to have it. We're slowly having it for all events. Anytime our president's speaking, they want captions in room. And so it's something we're trying to navigate as we go forward.
Like then we're using what is available at pretty much at no cost to us as it is. The live captioning in PowerPoint has been a popular tool. And then utilizing the captioning after the fact, the AI generated captioning in Panopto. Or if there's Zoom, we use the live captioning in Zoom. I'm not going to deny that we do not tick all the proper accommodations boxes on live streaming of events, but that's our marketing team handles that side of our events. So they're infamous for just using the Facebook captioning and live streaming on Facebook. That's a whole other discussion for another event we can have. But we do assistive listening for any spaces. Almost every space I've managed to start building out assistive listening in. I did get that support. But no, we don't really have a live captioner for anything other than just the AI generated stuff.
But it's always fun to hear how you guys are finding those solutions. And Katie mentioned some of the challenges with what you've deployed on PCs and what you can get to in the room. And I think we're coming up on the hour, so kind of want to wrap this up with one last discussion topic. And this is looking at the polls. I think the biggest challenge from a lot of folks today, whether it's switching platforms or different things, there is they said gaining buy-in from decision makers and kind of how do we make those big decisions. And I kind of want to throw this one at Jeff from a little bit different, more of the kind of the design tech perspective, because you did mention you guys made a big shift in control platform. Like, how did you and Katie kind of work together to get buy-in there?
A lot of my buy-in is I will reach out to manufacturers and get demo equipment, and I will build a test room to show people this is how it's going to work, and bring that on campus and like putting the decision makers in the room, like, oh no, this is how it works. This is what we're going to do. This is, the new features we're adding. The moment I can get their hands on it, I can get buy-in. It really is. I can't say it enough. You got to reach out to your manufacturer reps, get demo equipment in, and play around with it. Um, I'm kind of also well known for trying to break equipment. So I will get demo equipment and I will do my best to break that because if I'm putting something in my classroom, it has to be rock solid. It has to hold up because small team, we can't be running around for something that's going to break. Um, but it really is. I'm going to go back to it, get demo equipment, build up a mock room, and bring the people who are going to make those decisions into it. At this point, I've built up enough goodwill on campus that if I say, "Oh, I want to do this," they usually just follow along now.
Yeah. We're unfortunately very lucky in that capacity that we have an established rapport and trust in our campus, almost sometimes too much, because I'm like, please tell me more things that you want or what you'd like changed. I would love you to have more opinions. But we frequently they trust us. So but they'll also ask what matters to us. They know we're going to give them answers. And so but we had to build that. That didn't happen overnight. So it came from us having to explain out, pull out tech sheets in justification meetings. And then once they learned that we were kind of saying the same thing not over and over again, but we were showing them the details. Staying to the same equipment every time means they're not asking what's this new thing all the time. So when you standardize, when you start kind of limiting yourself, it's hard in AV. There's so many new things all the time, but sometimes for a set period of time or a set time frame, you have to kind of stay within a certain lane just for your own ability to maintain and for your users' ability to accept new sort of thing. So anything that's high vis to them, you have to kind of change slowly. And anything that's on the back end, they have no idea. Half our campus doesn't know we've changed major control backends in the back end. Part of that is Jeff programs in house. So we just made the touch panels look the same. And so we just kind of like swapped out behind the curtains and they don't really know we've changed the back end, but they're like, this works really different now. And I like it. And we're like, as long as you like it and it's easy to use, that's all that we want for you. So there's a handful of ways to do it, and anything to reduce the friction of change and the fear of friction, I think is the biggest one. Fear of friction is the thing to kind of tackle and think about.
We were very successful in getting buy-in with some high visibility. I was amazed that we were allowed to spend $1.5 million on direct view LED video walls. But as soon as we could show the incoming students on the tours these beautiful 21:9 digital billboards, I think that high visibility really stuck with leadership, and we're going to keep doing it. We're going to demo them in some small classrooms next.
You're my demo when I want that stuff too. I go, look what you Buffalo did.
I hear that a lot. That's good to know.
From our standpoint, we were lucky enough to have a building that we'd acquired that wasn't being used. So I built 3 different proof of concept rooms using 3 different manufacturers. It would have been a fourth, but we're a small school, and nobody from that fourth manufacturer would send us any equipment to demo. So the 3 that did, I built 3 proof of concept rooms utilizing the equipment in the same manner for all 3 rooms, made the UCIs look as close as I could to each other. There were the few things that we couldn't make them happen, and that encouraged faculty to go into these rooms, use them, and try to break them. Because like while I'm like Jeff, I mean, I may be trying to break something, but I may not be using it the way the faculty member is going to use it. And of the 3, our QSIS room was 100% selected by the faculty because they were unable to break it as badly as the other 2 rooms. And they just liked the ease of use. So that's how we got the buy-in for that. And all 3 of these rooms had a lecture capture device in them so they could schedule things, and they would do classes. So they would come in, start up the room, and then lecture to no one but record the lecture just to see how it worked.
I'd love to hear how that kind of show don't tell seems to reverberate across the group. And like Katie said, let's check in with each other, and we encourage that. That's what we love to hear that on Epiphan too. I think we like to work the same way, and like Jeff said, Ron threw his email in the chat. Like, if you want demo gear, you want to try any of this, reach out to us, reach out to whoever, from the different schools on the call as well. Everybody here, as you can hopefully tell from today, is pretty friendly, happy to help. And we've all learned a lot in various stops. So if we can help you get further on your journey, please reach out and continue the conversation. Thanks everybody. Thank you, especially, Katie, Jeff, Teddy, Beth, John. I think this has been our biggest panel yet, and it's been a lot of fun to be here with y'all. So thanks everyone for coming, and as always, keep in touch.